take into consideration that there may be a great deal of pain that went with a walk of 4 miles and not knowing what might happen, a night of sleeping with someone or near someone, and being afraid to fully go to sleep because you might wake up dead, robbed, or arrested. So within all of this is the life story of survival, but survival is a word. This is a story. Cut and take your film home.
It's all I want in this Geneva. I go home on a fight battle. God will die in hot spring. It better.
It's all about feeling. If you can play 1,000 notes a minute and it just goes straight across the board and there's no feeling, it doesn't mean anything.
I love her in the morning, I love her at night. The very next day, you know her husband just right. I love my baby.
Well, the blues, to all of most of us blacks, is a feeling. It comes out of suffering.
I love my baby. She don't care a thing about me.
Being denied, denial, refused, abused, misused. That's what the blues is.
See, a lot of times the younger people say that's old folks' music, the blues is. But wait until they have a problem.
The people who follow blues music and are attracted to it recognize the honesty of the singer's story.
There's no music in the world that cuts emotionally the way that blues guitar can cut.
He invented the whole approach that modern electric blues players use.
Sincere, honest, true, for real, and genuine. Those 5 things. If you have those 5 things, then you can play the blues. Otherwise, you're going to sound like a parakeet repeating something that you don't understand.
He's great in every way, just the girth of the man is great.
He's the only guy, or musician of any sort, male or female, that defines a genre of music.
He's played probably in every country where they have electricity, and probably a couple where they don't.
Well, when you say blues, you gotta say B.B., you know, no doubt.
He's the master. He really is the grand master.
What makes somebody great, somebody special? When you look at a man's life, can you truly say that man made a difference? People say folk are born that way or were blessed by a higher force. Others say your environment makes it so. In 1925, on a hot, sticky Wednesday in the middle of September, the cries of a newborn baby rang out from a sharecropper's cabin over the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta. A boy was born that day that was going to make a difference. His name, Riley B. King.
When you're coming back to 82, you look off on the sign and say, Ada Bina. Ada Bina be to the right, not to the right, to the left.
I was born, according to my dad, between a little place called Indianola and Ada Bina. So when I first talked about it, I said Ada Bina. And that's been going on ever since.
I walk my bedroom floor, down my head nod. Didn't try to have a cool down, just want to satisfy. I need my baby, I ain't lying. If I don't hurry up and find her, you know I think I'm going out of my mind.
And you go down there, straight around like it's like going to my office, the road gonna wind around. And you get down there, after you pass that lake, it's gonna be a creek. Number logs. If you see that bridge now, don't forget now, it's a bridge going across there. I don't know how good the bridge is now. No, we used to have plank walk across there.
From what he said, if I can understand him correctly, we're about at the turn to the road.
Dad, you did all right so far.
He must be looking over us, boss.
Yeah, he's looking over us now. To be here where somebody can truly say, B, this is where you were born. This is where the world first knew about you, right here. It's a high for me because I feel very good. My mother was named Nora Ella. My father was named Abbott Lee. But for a young couple that hadn't been married too long and that first kid coming out, they lived not too far back over here. Some of the houses in the area where I lived at, houses that we could look out through the boards of the house, different times of day and tell what time it was. When it rained, you had to have several buckets because the water would drop through the top. You have to set a bucket to keep it from splashing on the floor. My mother, I guess, was like most mothers, want to make sure that all the teaching and all of the guiding that they can do for you. And I believe my mother loved me, and I know I loved her. And everything she tried to teach me, I tried to learn. So finally, my mother and my dad, when they were separated, my mom left and moved to Kilmichael, Mississippi. I noticed that my mother had big spots of blood clots in her eye. She died of diabetes, same as her son had.
Nobody loved me but my mother, and she could be jiving too.
I had been living with other people all of my life since my mom. I had 2 or 3 great aunts. One of them was the one that used to have the phonograph that I used to go to her. Her name was Jemima. I used to love to go to her house for that, but didn't like to go to her house because she always kissed me. And she always dipped snuff, and I didn't like snuff. And every time she'd kiss me, I'd get a taste of that snuff, so I'd beg my mom, don't take me over there. Then I think about a phonograph, it's okay, take me on over. Kind of fixed myself for that first kiss. After that, I didn't have to go through that again.
He moved from there over on Ed Wayne Henderson place, and that's when Riley started staying with him on the George Boo place. And he moved over there to stay with his Uncle William and them to tend to the baby.
My mother's brother was married to a sanctified preacher's sister.
This preacher, after church on a Sunday afternoon, would visit his sister, which was my aunt. And he'd always lay his guitar on the bed, and I'd go get it as soon as they turned their back. So I think this is really what started me to fooling with the guitar, not by listening to some of the other people.
The roots, as they sometimes say, I think my beginning was Elkhorn School. At that time, I had to walk about 5 miles a day to school
4-month school did not provide much education on a plantation. He said them big boys ought to be in the field, not in school.
Usually I try to be positive in my thinking. And I owe that to Professor Luther H. Henson. He told me things then that I can still hear him telling me today. Don't smoke. Don't drink. You got one house, your body. Your body is one house. You're supposed to take care of that one because you're not going to get another one.
I think he did it because he saw the need. Oh, the black children need to be taught how to better themselves and make a better living. And it could be done if they would come to school and get a better education.
I'll always love him. I was a regular hand from the time I was 7 years old. See, they used to have no child labor laws and all that. So I was doing farm work just like the adults was when I was 7. I started about what we call from kin to can't. Can means when you can see. Can't when you cannot see. And I think about it, when I was traveling with the mule, following the mule, plowing, doing all that, you're walking about 30 miles a day. And you do that 6 days a week, so you figure it out. And then you do that 6 days a week, you do it for 6 months out of the year. So multiply that by 18 years. I've walked around the world.
Ooh, Lord, ain't my trouble so hard. Ooh, Lord, ain't my trouble so hard. Don't nobody
Out of that condition, the blues were born.
Usually one guy would be plowing by himself, or maybe one guy would take his hoe and chop way out in front of everybody else. And usually you would hear this guy sing. Oh, wake up in the morning.
That's the only time you get a chance to sing the blues is out in the field, because your parents didn't allow that in the house. Nothing but spirituals. So if you're picking cotton, you can sing whatever you want to sing, you know.
To play that music and not invoke the name of Jesus or God, I guess, then who are you invoking? The devil.
Oh, I don't know about all of that, but that's what they would call it. They said selling yourself to the devil.
A lot of people in the church, they go through this thing that it's the devil's music, but the way he plays and the way he sings, that is a gift from God. And if you are at all religious, you will believe that he has that gift and that he was touched when he was, you know, in the womb.
Everybody ought to see that.
You were John, Jim, Jones, and nobody all the week long. But Sunday morning you became Brother John, Sister Mary, and Mr. Jim, because you were somebody Sunday morning. But if it had not been for that, we would have gone out like a light.
My mother was very religious. Very, very religious. She made me go to church whether I wanted to or not.
When he joined the church, well, Archie was a preacher. My brother-in-law was a preacher. He preached this church out.
Reverend Archie Fair was our pastor and the first person I ever heard play electric guitar. That's why I wanted to be like him.
In the church, this boy would get a chance to play on Archie's guitar a little.
He was a preacher and a teacher. And I think that he didn't necessarily just meant for it to be me, but all of his students. And I liked him, worshiped him. And I think that's how he helped me a whole lot.
Well, when his grandmother moved over there, William decided that he wanted him to stay with his grandmother. So he put him down there with her.
And she would work for my mother and them. She would cook, and she'd clean house, just many things you need to do, you know. And they probably worked in the fields too.
When my grandmother died, I still stayed in the little house that my grandmother and I had lived in before she died. And I remember she owed something like $35, $40 or something, but we didn't make much money. I was making $15 a month, so. But I paid my grandmother's bill. I paid it off myself. I felt deserted. Nobody but me.
I'll survive.
After my daddy got me and brought me to Lexington, Mississippi, and I started going to school there, which was the first big school I'd ever gone to.
Well, you see, he had some half-sisters and brothers. And he said that they couldn't get along too good. That's what he told us.
He had 3 girls and a boy, and those was my sisters and brother, and which I loved, but I wasn't as close to them as I think I would have been had I been raised with them in the beginning. My dad never told me he loved me, never did. But I knew when he did, when he showed love to me, he called me Jack. Now, why in the heck did he call me Jack? But anytime he was very pleased, I had that feeling he called me Jack out of the clear blue sky. Jack, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And I'd feel so good till I'd almost cry because I knew what that meant. But he never, ever, 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 that I know, called, said, son, I love you. I love you. But I tell my kids, great-grandkids and grandkids, tell them all when I go home, I love you.
In those days, it was oppression, and you'd be depressed by the oppression because you had no rights. Black folk had no rights. You were not black then, you were Negroes or niggers.
Ku Klux Klan was thought of, I believe, in that area at the time. I never did come face to face with them, but I knew a lot of people did. For you that don't know it, the Citizen Council, White Citizen Council, began in Indianola, Mississippi, my home.
Our place was to work hard and obey the white man.
One of my first days of really experiencing what segregation was really like. A mob had killed a boy, they'd hung him. It had to do with a white lady. They had castrated him and drug him behind a car to the courthouse in Lexington, Mississippi, Lexington. And I saw it. And that's something I've never forgotten, I guess. It's sort of like people seeing people killed in the war. You don't forget it.
You were just a thing, not a human being, just a work thing. It had a slogan, if a mule die, buy another one.
Kill a nigger, hire another one. And that's the way I was brought up.
Now, that means you were nobody. You just about equal to a mule. You could not say yes or no to a white man. It was Mr. And you just didn't argue with them. And whatever they paid you, you accepted that and went along. There was no such thing as Social Security, no such thing as retirement. You had no insurance. Only insurance folks had was burial insurance when you die. Otherwise, they would put you in a box. They had a box, they'd make a box, put you in and bury you. I was there. I know. It was badder than bad.
We all were subject to racism and bigotry and hatred and denial. None of us could get a drink of water at a public water fountain. B.B. and none of the rest of us could go and sit in a restaurant and have a decent meal. None of us could stay at B.B. I know other Negro could go in the hotel and get a room. So yes, he faced the same thing that all of us faced. That was racism, bigotry, and hatred. But let me add this though. Let me say this to you about B.B. He never let that turn him against white people.
Young Riley King started dreaming of life back in the Delta. The Delta was home. So late in 1941, 16-year-old Riley jumped on his bicycle and began to pedal his way home, back to where his heart belonged.
So me and John were sitting on the porch one evening, and here he come riding on his bike. And I said, who is that? And he said, I don't know. And he got up a little closer. I said, oh, that's Riley. But see, all his other people had left here.
But there was a few people like the Fairs, Mr. John Fair and his beautiful wife, Miss Leslie Fair.
John brought him to my father and to him a place to stay. So he fixed that little cabin up for him, and he didn't have any clothes. All he had was just the clothes on his back in that bicycle.
I had a good boss. Mr. Cottage was one of those people that I wish the world had a lot more of them. He seemed to be one of them people that was a fair man. During those days in the 30s, a lot of times we didn't think a lot of white people was fair. We thought a lot of the white people at that time thought only of themselves. But he wasn't one of those people.
The house stood about here, where B.B. lived when he lived with Flake and Zelma Cartledge and their son Wayne.
I do remember that he always wanted to play a guitar. And a fellow named Denzel Tibble had a guitar he wanted to sell, $15. And my father went down there and paid for it for him, and B.B. paid my father back, you see.
You may not know that Wayne wanted his daddy to buy the guitar for him, and he wouldn't do it, and the B.B. was the one that ended up with a guitar.
And I'm still mad about I didn't get a guitar.
When I first came to the Barrett plantation, I'd heard a lot about the plantation and heard a lot from a lot of the tenants that lived on the plantation about what a nice man he was to work for.
B.B. used to be my tractor driver. He drove tractor on Mr. Barrett. B.B. did.
There was many big plantations, and they would have somebody they call a rider. Usually it was a white person on a horse. This white person usually carried a gun in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, carried a whip. Mr. Barrett was very thoughtful, I would say. So what he did, he hired a black overseer named Mr. Baggett, Booker Baggett. And we worked like crazy because we wanted to keep him. And Mr. Baggett is the one that taught me to drive tractor. If there's any such thing as a superstar in tractors, I thought I was. Of course, I thought it was pretty cute, too, at the time. I'd wake up, and I'm due at the tractor barn in about half an hour. And I lived about a mile from the tractor barn. So when I'd wake up, having about 30, 40 minutes to get to the tractor barn, I put on my clothes and was at the tractor barn by the time everybody else was ready to fill up.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand.
My early years, I sang gospel songs with various quartets. And usually I was the lead singer all the time. And we did very well. There was a group called
Famous St. John Gospel Singers.
The famous St. John Gospel Singers.
They had a good time listening to it. When I get home, I never do turn the radio off, sit there and wait on them to come on. Sure did.
Then it's the time that I decided I wanted to get married, and I got married to a young lady.
To Martha King. But in that year, we lived in the house together. We lived in a 3-room shotgun house. 2 doors, one in front and one in back.
But Martha and B.B. married, they never had no children. He was singing gospel song then, and he didn't stay at home much with her. He didn't stay at home much. He didn't run around singing a whole lot.
Saturdays was my day. Go to town on Saturdays and have a good time.
If you ever been down to New Orleans, then you can understand just what I mean. Now, all through the week.
Some walked to town. Some would catch a ride. One person might have a car. And people used to come to town then in wagons.
Everybody threw their cares to the wind.
Oh, Church Street was black folk street.
It was rockin'. It was rockin'.
People were in and out, gambling, and doing what little dancing they were doing. If you didn't get on Church Street, you wouldn't be in Indianola.
He had one corner he would play on early during Saturday afternoon and would put his hat out and people would throw coins in it. Later on during that Saturday evening, when he would move further down Church Street, where the real roughnecks were and the people who had a real appreciation for the blues and didn't mind people knowing it, they threw just a little more coins in the hat than the earlier crowd, which
probably were the church-going people.
Nah, he used to play on what they call, you know, juke houses, porches all the way down Church Street. That's what used to be, I reckon you wouldn't call them nightclubs, but juke joints. It would be that time of year then.
Indianola, Mississippi, on a Saturday night on Church Street, you would remember forever. I came in a hurry on my way to go to a church to sing that night. I'd been plowing, and then it happened. We got off that evening. I cut the ignition off of the tractor, and I jumped down and started running to get ready to go out, and it started up again. And when the tractor started up again, it went forward, and all of this broke off. Scared me half to death. I never did stop running, and that's the first time I went to Memphis.
And now I'm walking and crying. You don't love me no more. Well, I did all for you, did all I could. All I did, darling.
A lot of fun because Memphis was a city. I would say it was like heaven. All them guitars and guys could play them. Oh, what a feeling it was.
Beale Street had many musicians that was interested in trying to help you if you wanted to learn. And they had musicians that would just meet up on Beale Street like on the weekends and trade ideas.
When I came to Memphis, started hearing all those other guys play, I found out I was nothing that much. I'm still like that today.
Once in Memphis, B.B. King sought and found his cousin, the great bluesman Booker White.
Booker was born up around West Point, Mississippi. And a lot of people say he taught me to play, but that's not true. But he did teach me quite a bit about being a blues player. Booker White used to tell me that to be a blues singer, you should always dress like you was trying to go to the bank to borrow money, which means you dress, well, a word musicians use, kind of sharp, you know. And he used to play with a slide on his finger. And I could never get that. Well, I've got stupid fingers. They just wouldn't work. So in order to get somewhat the type sound that he had, I would trill my hand like that. And I think over the years I've done pretty good with it. Still don't have it right.
I asked B.B. one time how he got his guitar to sound that way, and he said, I was trying to make it sound like a steel. So who would have thought?
Beale Street Amateur Night. I hosted the show for 11 consecutive years.
At first, you used to have a $5, $3, and $2 prize. But then it got so that it was just everybody that came on stage got $1.
Now, I remember going on that show many times, and thank God for Rufus Thomas, because Rufus Thomas was the MC. I guess I looked so bad and so pitiful and was so broke. Rufus Thomas, when he would see me, he'd say, you know you was on last week. He'd say, yeah. Well, why are you back this week? I need to go on again, because I need that $1.
I stayed up there for about 6 or 8 months, and then I called some of my family back, and I said, tell Mr. Barrett I'm sorry, and I would like to work and pay it off.
So he got back in with Mr. John Barrett and came back and worked by the day, driving tractors.
Well, with wobbly legs, I came back, and I think it cost me $500 or $600, and I paid it off. And the next time I left to go to Memphis to start my career, I started it correctly.
Whoa, Lord, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city, God knows.
When we left Mississippi going to Memphis, we expected many, many things to happen, and it did. The late Sonny Boy, the second Sonny Boy Williamson, but he was on the radio in West Memphis, Arkansas.
I decided I wanted to go over and see him one day, and one day I did. And when I went over to see him, I begged him to let me sing a song. So he made me audition, and I did, and he liked it, and he put me on his show that day.
And that night he had 2 jobs to play. One of them he didn't want because it didn't pay much money. So he called the lady and asked the lady that he was supposed to play for, did she hear the program? She said yes.
So he called her and he said, Miss Anna, did you hear the boy? And she said, yeah. He said, well, I'm going to send him down to work for me tonight.
So I went over there, man, and they paid me $12. 12 American dollars. That's a lot of bread, you know, for a guy that'd been making, you know, like 35 cents a hundred picking cotton, you know.
She said, if you can get a job on the radio, like Sonny Boy has, I'll give you this job, and you can play 6 nights a week. And I thought about that and said, God, I hope I can get me a job on the radio. Well, I'm just a blues singer. Tractor driver, truck driver. I was a disc jockey for a while.
Why I sing the blues is because I lived it.
You probably wondered, that guy, the way you talk, you're a disc jockey? Trust me, I was for about 5 years.
The only way to do it is say it loud and clear, make sure that everyone will hear. It's the truth the way it is.
And I enjoyed it so much till the call letters of the radio station, I can remember today like it was yesterday.
This is B.B. King, making a statement and a natural fact.
WDIA.
Everybody want to know why I sing the blues.
The first all-black operated station in the Mid-South. In fact, I think in the nation.
Greetings and salutations. Ooh, poopy doo, and how do you do? It's a good morning to you on an all-blue Saturday here on WDIA with your Rufus Thomas.
This new radio station was being opened in Memphis. So when the red light went off the air, I went to the window and I knocked. So he came to the door and said, what can I do for you, young fella? And I said, well, I want to make a record and I want to go on the radio. And he laughed. And Mr. Ferguson said, well, we don't make records. And then he had this deep thought look in his face. And he said to Mr. Williams, he said, you know, we got this new product. So maybe he would be good for this new product. So he went and got me a bottle, and he held it up like this. He said, this is Pepticon. Do you think you could write a jingle for it? I started thinking about it. I said, yes, sir, I can write a jingle. So it went like this. Pepticon show is good. Pepticon show is good. Pepticon show is good. You can get it anywhere in your neighborhood. He said, you hired.
Blues Boy King. Blues Boy, who, your dad named you that?
No, I used to be a disc jockey in Memphis, and they called me the boy from Bill Street, the Blues Boy. So people, instead of saying Blues Boy, they just started using the word B.B., which meant Blues Boy. And my real name is Riley B. King. Now, most times, if someone would come up and say, hi, Riley, I would wonder who they're talking about.
I taught him the best I could. A lot of times he didn't understand what I was telling him. But when I put him with a group, that put pressure on him and he had to learn. You can't work with nobody without you know. You see what a bass player is right now when you see B.B. playing, the bass player is right behind him. That's what he listens to. Now you know.
In fact, it's like I usually tell the band like I have today. You know a lot more than I do. And you play better than I do, but I'm the band leader.
B.B. was just learning how to play, but he always could sing, and he finally learned how to play.
Having learned from those around him, the young and confident Riley King was ready to cut his first sides.
B.B. King first recorded for Bullet Records in Nashville, Tennessee. Jim Bullitt owned the company. I think he had 4 sides he did.
He did a thing for his first wife, Martha King. In fact, the song was recorded Martha King.
I thought I was really making it at that time as a musician, because I was recording.
Now it is 3 o'clock in the morning.
The first session that I did with B.B. in Memphis, where he was 3 O'Clock Blues, was his hit record that came out of there. It was just put the musicians together and do it.
I said, how big was that amplifier you had when you made 3 o'clock in the morning? He said, about like that. And that's when you had that real natural tone. It wasn't nothing fictitious about it. You know, that's exactly what you played is what the amplifier gave you back.
When he recorded 3 O'Clock Blues, that's when things really began to happen for him.
He said, I'd like to have a new guitar before we went in the studio. I said, I'll buy you 2 of them. I bought him 2 guitars. That's when he called them Lucille. And he says, I'll make you 2 hit records, which he did.
I've always wanted to meet Helen.
Helen? Who's Helen?
Helen, your guitar. You know, when you start...
Oh, you're talking about Lucille. This is Lucille. It's my baby.
That's not the guitar I saw you with last night, baby.
The first one that was named Lucille was because of a fight in a little nightclub. And we played there in winter. Had something like that big garbage can, just like that one. Just like it, but a little larger than that. And they would half fill that can with kerosene, light that fuel, and that's what we had for heat.
So this particular night, 2 guys started fighting, and one of them knocked the other one over on this container, and the fuel, spilled on the floor, and it was already burning. So as they tried to put it out, it seemed to burn more.
Everybody in the little club was dancing, started to run outside, including me.
But when I got on the outside, I remember that I'd ran off and left my guitar. So I started back for it, and the fellas that were working with me said, no, don't do it. But I went anyway. And I got my guitar, but I was almost burned to death trying to save it. So the next morning we found that 2 men had gotten burned, got trapped in the building, got burned to death. And we also found that these 2 guys was fighting about a lady. The lady's name was Lucille.
I named my guitar Lucille to remind me not to do a thing like that again. And I haven't.
Now, darling, know I love you.
Beale Street entrepreneur Robert Henry started to look after the interests of B.B. King. This resulted in a national tour of the main black theaters and clubs known as the Chitlin Circuit. The road was no place for a marriage. The road was B.B. King's new home.
And he told me, he said, Seal? I said, yes. He said, Martha done left me. I said, girl, why you leaving? And she said, 'cause he won't stay at home. He playing, going everywhere. I said, Martha, B.B. can't like all them women he liking him. I said, he playing. I said, girl, you crazy. You should stay with your husband. But she didn't.
This business is a very difficult business. But I couldn't live without it, and I don't think he can live without it either.
Baby, for someone else.
When Bill Harvey signed on to B.B., Bill Harvey, I think Bill Harvey had about 11. Yeah, he had 11 pieces. And he stayed with B.B. for 14 years.
Every record that B.B. put out after Harvey got with him, the first one was Woke Up This Morning was a hit.
A little bit later on, after I had been touring for a while, then I turned the disc jockey loose and just toured. And I'm still doing that.
At the time when B.B. got his first bus, there was excitement because coming out of a station wagon into a big Continental Trailway bus was just a marvelous feat for the group. And it was something that none of the other groups had either.
This is the original picture of the B.B. King Band on Beale Street in 1955. Beale and Hernanda, between Hernanda and 3rd Street.
I think everybody knows this band as the B.B. King Band. This the B.B. King Band. No matter how many bands he goes through, this will always be the B.B. King Band.
We were bad. Yeah, we were good. Under your seat, you would have a box of food, like pork and beans and sardines and crackers and that kind of stuff, because a lot of times you wouldn't have time to eat at a restaurant, a cafe per se, and it was very difficult because a lot of the places you couldn't go in anyway.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Desegregation of America didn't start until the 60s. And B.B. had been on the road for a good 10, 12 years before that. You couldn't live, it was just a chitlin circuit, that's what they called it. Negro baseball played it. The big black bands played the chitlin circles all over America. That's what they call the black community, the chitlin circuit.
But y'all didn't think y'all was a chitlin circuit, did you?
Well, it wasn't they don't mad about it. That was just a time.
But I mean, y'all didn't realize that it was quote unquote the chitlin circuit.
Oh no!
Everybody knew that the black section of America was the chitlin circuit.
But Ernest, hold on.
But we didn't refer
you have to understand.
I'm saying they didn't refer to it as the chitlin circuit.
Yes, they did.
Did y'all
get any books out of that period? You'll know that period was the chitlin circuit.
Accepted
that all places where Negroes played.
They accepted that circuit because you were playing black clubs.
Black clubs, and that was
playing black ballrooms.
Identification. It wasn't no sign up.
See,
it was just verbiage.
We went to Vegas.
Chitlin circuit.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
We just played everywhere. Parlor theater to the honky-tonk joints, all over the country.
B was always on the road. He's the only guy, I think he got a record that he played 365 days one year. And I tell him all the time, I don't want that record. He can keep that one, you know.
I used to work like 320 days a year. B.B. worked more gigs.
I don't know where he gets the energy from. I mean, this man works more than anybody because the road is his home.
No night off, 365 days a year. Some days we didn't even get a chance to go to sleep.
I've got a sweet little angel. I love the way she spreads the wings.
He told me he wasn't going to ask my mom to get married because he felt that she would say no, and he didn't want that. So he said, we'll just have to wait until you get 18. So I said, okay. And that's what we did. And he was in Detroit at the time. Actually, was 18 in March, but he wanted to put off getting married until June when we were in Detroit because he wanted Reverend Franklin, who's Aretha's Franklin, father, to marry us. So we waited until we got to Detroit, got the license, and Reverend Franklin married us.
All I know is he'd be a hard man to have a relationship with because he's moving so fast. I mean, the dude sits down when he's playing, but he is running through the air.
After we got married, and we got in a car and went to Cleveland and went to work, and it just kept going after that. Just one day led into another. In the early days, we'd love to go fishing. I mean, anytime he had the opportunity, he would go fishing. So one day he told me he was going fishing, and he went out to the car, and I said, "You're going fishing in your suit?" He says, "That's all I have." He says, "I don't have any other clothes, so I have to go fishing in a suit." And it was a silk suit. So he went fishing in a silk suit. And that just shows you whatever he wanted to do and however he felt like doing it, he would do it no matter what.
First, I want to say, when I try to play not just for myself. I try to play for people. I want them to laugh. I want them to smile.
The blues becomes a living thing when he's playing it. It's not just somebody trying to play the blues. It becomes a palpable presence on stage.
B.B. King is gone when he's playing. B.B. King's been gone in the world of the blues, just living in that ether for so long that he belongs to it.
I looked over, I heard this sound of like a 747 taking off, which is his voice. And I noticed that as he stepped back from the microphone, his voice got louder. And then I realized, as they say in New Orleans, this is some other kind of shit. This is some other kind of shit. I don't know, there's some shamanism involved.
I think when I was 15, I went and saw B.B. in concert, and completely changed my life.
It's not about technique at all.
The first thing that inspired me, that I got from B.B. King,
he's concerned with telling a story,
was the direct speaking to one,
He's concerned with moving people. And I have, all of my career with my writing and my playing, I have tried to maintain my focus on that.
B.B. King's tone was the first sound that I now call it SOCC. Means the sound of collective consciousness.
You can write a song and bullshit with it, but you can't. If you don't sell it, what the hell did you cut it for? B.B. knew how to sell it. He was great at this.
How about a nice warm round of applause to welcome the world's greatest blues singer, the king of the blues, B.B. King!
When B.B. would come to Chicago, he played a lot of different venues. He played clubs, dances, and places like that. And he also played the Regal Theater.
Jimi Hendrix gave me my first copy of Live at the Regal.
For me, that's just like the ultimate live B.B. King blues album.
Recordings like Live at the Regal and Live at the Cook County Jail are two of my favorite live albums of all time. I think the fire and the passion in which he was performing on those two recordings is, I think it's hard to come close to matching that. And Live at the Regal was like this pivotal musical watershed that took me away from the British blues temporarily, where I had just discovered the American blues for the very first time after listening to Clapton and Peter Green and Paul Kossoff and a band Free and the Jeff Beck Group and every incarnation of John Mayall and the Blues Breakers.
One of the things that B.B. has is a great rapport with the audience. He did that song, I bought you a brand new Ford and you wanted a Cadillac.
I bought you a $10 dinner. You said thanks for the snack.
I let you stay in my penthouse and you said it was just a shack. I gave you 7 children and now you want to give them back.
And now you want to give them back.
You want to hear B.B. King at la creme de la creme, like Dexter Gordon would say, Listen to Live at Regal, and every note, every word, every song, everything is a perfect, flawless diamond, you know? And that's Peter Green got his tone. When you hear Peter Green, he sounds like B.B. King, Live at Regal.
I remember hearing the big thick notes, so do, you know, he starts off big thick notes, not tangy or twangy, starts off on there and goes through the tones of the guitar.
We didn't hardly play for any white artists. Every once in a while, I'd have Eric Clapton, I'm laughing right now. It was Eric Clapton, Paul Butterfield, Michael Bloomfield. When they started showing up in clubs in Chicago, we wasn't making enough money to buy a bottle of whiskey, so we'd go to next door to get the bottle of wine at the liquor store, which was cheaper. And every time I saw a white face, I said, look out, man, there's a cop in the house, you know? And that was these kids coming in, picking up on the type of blues that Muddy and we all was playing.
When I was 17 at a club in Beaumont called the Raven, I had a fake ID and got in.
We were playing, and I saw these 4 white people come in, and one was extra white, Johnny Winter.
I kept sending the band members up to ask him if it was okay if I played, and he didn't even know if I could play at all.
Can he play? He said yes. And he said, will you let him play? I said, I don't know, I'll let you know in a little while.
We were the only white people in the club, and he'd been having tax problems, and he thought we were from the IRS come to bust him for his taxes.
So I was so shocked and surprised that it wasn't about the IRS till it took me a little while to kind of get my feet back on the ground, you know.
He kept saying, well, we have arrangements. I've heard all your records. I know all your arrangements. He asked to see my union card. He really checked me out.
I let him sit in, and he was good. I'll tell you, he was good. Well, I tried him. I went through 3 or 4 different keys that a lot of guys are not too familiar with, and I was enjoying it. But he was a genuine guy.
So he's a saint. He's a blues saint.
All of us in this genre, all of us in any kind of roots music, we take what came before us.
The people I think that influenced me most was Lowell Fulson, Elmo James. I was crazy about Charlie Christian. And I also liked, one of my favorites, real favorites, was Django Reinhardt. I was crazy about Blind Lemon and Lonnie Johnson. Just the sound that they had made me, I don't know, tingle inside.
The last 2 or 3 generations are all students of B.B. Everybody from B.B.'s generation are all students of T-Bone. I mean, he really was the guy.
Well, just before I went in the Army, about 42, I think, I heard of a guy called T-Bone Walker.
I'm in love with a woman, but she's not in love with me.
T-Bone Walker, I thought was the best ever at doing what he did and how he did it. I loved him, still do.
And I imagine today, if you listen to my playing, you'll hear a little bit of all of them. I'm telling my secret. But I think a little bit of all of those people I liked with my own ideas or created the B.B. King twingy guitar sound, maybe.
It's tough because usually divorces come because of cheating, or you fall out of love, or you have money problems. And we've had all those things, and we've survived them. But the love always stayed, and you know, it's... You just have to do it.
If you're going to be a traveling musician, marriage should be something you would want to do
until you're not traveling a lot, because there's very few traveling musicians that I know that have been able and successful in marriage life.
It's very difficult to have a family life with someone who's working on the road 365 days a year. And we did have somewhat of an agreement that he would cut back some on his work, but that was very unrealistic for me to expect. And you get to a point that you realize it is unrealistic.
Because the nice thing is when you are married, terrible thing when you're being divorced. It's awful.
If I had to do it all over again, would I, at this stage? Yes, I would.
Oh, I guess it's the chains that bind me. I can't shake or lose these chains and things.
He came to me, I didn't come to him. Right. And he was brought to me because he had financial problems, big time. And he couldn't do anything, you know? And he had to understand, and he had to listen to the rules, and he did.
Sid helped me out, helped me to get out of trouble with the government. The other thing, so I said, well, look, you're my CPA, but you've been doing everything that my manager should do. Well, why don't you be my manager? In fact, I asked him. He asked me.
I set up a master plan where we would be able to expose B.B. out of the Chitlin circuit and get up into the crossover area so he could make some money. He wasn't making any money to speak of, you know?
Sid absolutely was sort of a gateway to B.B.'s career, and you know, everything after that time period, it was kind of sort of, you know, it was already in place.
I didn't really become aware of blues in general until the English guitar players started talking about it.
By the time I'd done most of my homework, which was during my mid-20s, I was very fortunate to get invited to play by John Mayall.
I would say that Eric was most influenced by Freddie King's playing. Mick Taylor was most influenced by Albert King, and Peter Green was most definitely a B.B. King devotee.
When I first met Jimi Hendrix, he talked about B.B. King. So now he comes out and plays just a couple of notes, you know, sort of. And yeah, I know what you're saying. You say what you can say with a lot of notes. You can say with B.B. King would say with a couple of notes, you know.
The wonderful thing about the Three Kings is we all learned to play from them.
The English invasion, I think that really introduced a lot of Americans, including me, to Howlin' Wolf and Slim Harpo and Muddy Waters. I probably got more exposed to that kind of Chicago blues and B.B. King, you know, through that axis of the English blues guys and Eric Clapton. It was a great gift the Brits gave us.
So the British blues for me was more immediate and it was more exciting. It was louder, it tended to be a Les Paul guitar and Marshall amp. It was more rock.
We do it better. That was the thing. We do it better. But it seemed to have had that elevation, that difference, when the white boys started to singing the blues. And they really put it on a different kind of a scale.
Many of these young players coming along today have been really turned on by the way you play the guitar. People like Mike Bloomfield.
Oh, he's
Do you hear yourself coming back from those bands?
Well, yes, I believe I do. I don't want to stick my neck out there, but I think so. But I'm grateful that
some of them seem to like me. I'm grateful because to me it seemed to open a few doors for us that seemed like that was never going to be open.
Oh, because I need your love so bad. Need a soft voice that talk to me at night.
First chance to play in front of a wide audience, it's like, who are these people? And, you know.
So I sent my road manager in and told him to go and tell Bill I was there, but I thought it was the wrong place, so we were going to leave. So Bill came back out with the road manager and came on the bus, sit down. He said, no, you're at the right place.
I happened to be there. The opening act was Otis Rush and Steve Miller and B.B. King.
And he said, ladies and gentlemen, now would you believe that when he said that you could hear a pin drop? He said, I bring you the chairman of the board, B.B. King. I've never been introduced like that before or since. When he mentioned my name, they all stood up. And for about 3 or 4 tunes after that, they would stand up after every tune. And I was so touched till I cried standing up there.
You know, it's like watching a chandelier. All I could see was his tears and the diamond ring that he had to wipe his tears. And I was still washing dishes at the time. I was living with my mom. And when I saw B.B. receive that kind of adulation, that kind of honor, I said, this is what I want.
So I felt weird, felt real weird. But I did it. And after that, I cried back up the stairway.
It's like when Nat King Cole broke through and they accepted him. So we kept doing that after the initial 68 period, working the Fillmore, working colleges, and then all of a sudden we were able to book B.B. into these rock and roll clubs and other venues that never had black entertainers before.
He shifted a gear from playing in black clubs. All of a sudden he was playing for white audiences. And it shifted a couple of gears there, right there. And then B.B. could do whatever the hell he wanted to do.
In their early days, including mine, you didn't get paid. You played well and you got drunk if you drank, and if you played well enough, you got a good-looking woman. So this was your pay.
Women just scream.
Oh, come on.
BB.
Yeah, wait a minute.
BB.
Solomon.
I used to sell BBs.
Solomon.
I used to sell BBs to women. Tell them, this is BB King's BBs.
Oh, yeah, I've been called a womanizer. I've been called many things pertaining to women. Most of them are true, because I love women. I don't think that most women would want me now at my age. Oh, a few might, because they might think I've saved $1 or $2 here and there. Well, maybe a couple.
Thrill is gone. The thrill is gone away. Oh, the thrill is gone, baby. The thrill is gone away.
I had been there about 8 months. In the interim, I'd obviously looked at the artist roster that was there, and I was been a B.B. fan since I was a kid, literally, and I kept bugging them. I want to produce B.B. King. I want to produce B.B. Well, you can't do that. Well, why not? Well, you're white, and you're too young.
You know you done me wrong, baby, and you're gonna be sore someday.
I figured if I could take some different players and put them around B.B., that something good would happen. So I pitched him on the idea, and he said, he was interested, but he said, I don't want to really commit to this for a full album. So I said, well, how about we do half of it live with your band and then half of it with my band in the studio? And he said, okay, we'll do it that way. So thusly Live and Well. Very shortly after that, I think it was only like 8 months later, we were ready. We were scheduled to do another album, and I said I'd like to do it all with my band. He said, "Sure, let's do it all that way." And that was the big success that resulted out of the second album, which The Thrill Is Gone.
Thrill is gone. Thrill is gone away.
We recorded that maybe around 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm listening back to it around 2 in the morning, going through everything that we'd recorded that day. And I had the idea to put strings on it. And I think that's probably the best idea I've ever had in my career. Because I think that's what took it to the pop charts.
John actually brought in The Thrill Is Gone and played it to all of us. I have that great memory of that.
But B.B. had really a million-selling record then. And that really put B.B. King into a different category completely.
I am the little red rooster, too lazy to crow.
Sid was a big proponent of exposing B.B. to other audiences, so sometimes he took dates that were not as lucrative financially in order to bring him to other audiences that were not exposed to him.
Somehow or another, my manager had talked with some of the people connected with the Stones and asked them or presented my name to them that if they needed a kind of what you might say a warm-up group or something of that sort, that I was available.
We never saw B.B. or had anything to do with B.B. until '69 when we took him on tour.
Hounds begin to howl.
He'd take the band right down to a whisper, and it was amazing. You just hit the ding, ding with the little guitar lines, and then you'd build and build and build into this massive sort of sound with the band. I'd never heard dynamics like it. I've never heard them since. I don't think anybody else has ever managed to achieve that kind of thing that he did.
In a way, I think it was an interesting time for black blues musicians because it was probably one of the few times they got to play in stadiums to a predominantly white audience.
The many people that I hadn't played, to, hadn't heard of me, started to, I think, listen to me or pay attention to me from that tour.
Please drive him home.
They themselves would be the first ones to admit that they started out as a blues band. They were always very good at paying homage to the blues artists that influenced them.
We went to record at the legendary Chess Studios, which is on South Michigan Avenue.
And they wanted to know how we were doing it and why we wanted to do it. Why you want to play like me? It has to be very good stuff, And one day I might get there.
They were very, very generous to us, and they passed on all the tips and gave us all the help, and they were very, very kind. And I want to salute those guys. Most of them are not with us anymore. Of course, one is B.B. King, who
The only tune I ever brought in that I asked B.B. to do, and that was Hummingbird, the Leon Russell song. And to get Leon to come and play with B.B., getting people to come play with B.B. was never a problem.
I played on a song called Hummingbird that Leon Russell wrote.
He plays those little obligatos. When he sings, he plays a lick, and he sings, he plays another lick. Turns out he does that when he talks, too. So he was talking to me, and And one time I was down in Tuscaloosa, da-da-da, and I listened to it a couple times. And then I started playing the background to it. And they're not all the same. They're not in the same keys. They're not the same groove or anything. And so he'd finish it. We'd finish the song, whatever, what key, whatever it was, play the ending. He didn't say anything, and he'd start talking about something else, and he'd play something else, and I'd play that background. We got into about the third one, and B.B. started crying. He said, I've never had that before. So it was very touching to me. I was such a student of his, I knew what he meant when he said those things on the guitar. So it was a great compliment.
In 1971, B.B. King threw the nest and ventured on his first overseas tour. This culminated in a collaborative album called B.B. King in London.
With the break. Okay, we're starting again from the top so you get a feel of what I'm talking about. Not the top of the top of the last one, okay? Fast moving, baby. I can't do nothing to slow you down. Your speed is supersonic, mama, and you're faster than sound. Now. You don't belong to the Union, man.
When B.B. came to London to make that album, B.B. in London, I was invited to play. It was just incredible. We're playing away, and B.B. sort of looks at me, and I thought, oh, he wants to end the song. So and he goes, too good to lose. And we came right in again. It was like, oh my God, it was so great. We just kicked it in again. And he did pay me a huge compliment in those sessions because he called me, hey, Ringo, you were just like a clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock.
He just had everything that you'd want out of a performer. You know, he had the energy, the charisma, you know, he's handsome, he's got beautiful tone. Everything had a meaning, every note, just like a punch.
In 1974, I produced a big event. I stepped out of my usual life and produced this big event in Zaire in 1974 that surrounded the fight between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. And I brought B.B. over. B.B. came without a band and was backed by the Crusaders, who I was producing it. So B.B. was knocked out with how that went. A few years later, I got a call from B.B. saying that he really needed to make a record and would I be interested. So we sat down with Joe Sample from the Crusaders, who was the piano player, and I put him together with a great lyricist, a young lyricist named Will Jennings at the time. We made our first record with B.B. The magic of recording is the danger in recording. When someone's played something for 3 years and they come up, they walk into a studio and play it, it's not, they know it. They've been through it so many times, but when they're engaging it for the first time, and if you can capture that moment, you got yourself something special. The end of that first album, he said, I made a mistake. I left Sid. I wish I hadn't done it. It was a mistake, and I don't know if Sid would ever. I said, what are you trying to say, B? He says, well, I think we got a winner here, and I need somebody to help me navigate it, you know what I mean? So I said, well, why don't I make a call to Sid? You want me to do that? And I said, Sid, I think we got a hit album with B.B. He wants you to come back. He said, did he say that? I said, not in that many words, but I think you should come out, man. He says, I'll take the red eye. So the next day, he showed up at the studio, and they were there till the day Sid died.
There was a time when he was doing 300 plus days a year. And I'm talking about back in the late 70s and all through the 80s and the first part of the 90s.
Many people tend to slow down in their 60s. Not B.B. King. His next collaboration with a young band from Ireland was about to propel B.B. to a whole new audience.
Well, you tour with the Rolling Stones, and then you go with the popular group of now, and that's with Bono and U2. Huh?
My number one.
Keith Richards played blues records to us, and it began this kind of journey to discover who were the greats. And, you know, B.B. King's not just, you know, great. He's like, great.
Believe it or not, B.B. King came to Dublin, Ireland, and he was playing in this club in Dublin, Ireland, and we wrote this song for him. It's called When Love Comes to Town.
I had went to listen to the tape, and I was able to kind of get some of it together. Hope you like the song. I love the song. I think that the lyrics is really real heavy lyrics. You're mighty young to write such heavy lyrics.
I gave it my absolute, you know, everything I had in that howl at the start of the song, and then B.B. King opened up his mouth and I felt like a girl.
I've been accused of the things I've said.
We had learnt, we'd absorbed, but the more we tried to be like B.B., the less convincing we were.
I'm no good with chords, so what we do is get somebody else to play chords.
Sure, well, Ed will do that. There's not much chords in this song.
Yeah.
I think there's only 2.
I'm horrible with chords.
When we were working on When Love Comes to Town, we were sitting around and we were showing him the chords. And he said, gentlemen, I don't do chords. I do this.
I don't know what to do there. I'm just in there. Yeah. Is that a joke?
But there was this great sense of camaraderie in his band, and it was a joy, just a joy to share a stage with B.B. King, that rich, brassy sound they had behind him with the horn section, and then his grace. You know, he's a lesson in grace.
All right. Might as well go for it.
A lot of emotion right there. That's all right, young man. That's all right.
The Dead is very much in his direction.
The character of any great musician is usually identifiable by the individuality of their vibrato. Most players are recognizable by that particular facet of their playing, and that's how I would know BB's playing and hit one note. I can tell BB from one note. You know, most of us can, I think.
I'd say that's true, yeah. Yeah, I mean, his sound is completely unique to him.
If you can just play one note and somebody else can say, recognize who that is.
One note, you know that's him and Lucille.
He can take one note and make it so sexy.
One note, you know, is all it takes.
The note with the vibrato.
One note, one note,
one note.
That note is not in the amplifier, and it's not even on his fingers. It's coming from the center of his heart. You know, I can hear B.B. King with the sound off on the TV, just by looking at his face.
I remember Eric Clapton was on CNN, and they asked him who he had never played with, and B.B. evidently was watching it because I was, and he said, B.B. King.
The first time I met him, I sat and played with him. There are pictures of me and him sitting on amplifiers, you know. It's a long time ago. It's 66, 67, and that was it for me. I mean, one of my dreams come true.
CD he did with me called Riding with the King, he named it, I didn't. He had the ideas, most of the ideas for it. He had them, I didn't. And it was my CD. But I had told him when we started, because his ideas I respect.
Next year, don't do anything during that period, and we'll do it. And he stuck to it, you know. It was a commitment we both kept.
When I'm going in the studio to do what I do, I don't need you, Eric, nobody else, to show me what I want to do. But I listen to ideas, and I listen to a lot of his ideas, and he had a lot of good ones for Riding with the King.
So I thought, well, the best thing to do is we'll just go into the room with a couple of acoustic guitars and see what comes out.
Whatever you think is good, we'll try it. And we did, and they were good. Everything. Except trying to make me play acoustic guitar. I didn't like that. I had been cut all to pieces by a guy called Alexis Corner. Alexis Corner said, B, I got two modern guitars, acoustic guitars, and I got an idea for something I call Alexis Boogie. So let's try it. But boy, when we started the recording, he just cut me to pieces. I said, I will never play another one as long as you're alive. And I didn't. I promised I wouldn't do it again, but Alexis is dead now, so I'll try it. And he did the same thing, cut me to pieces. So I won't do it again.
From day one with B.B., from that day at the Cafe at Go-Go until now, you know, we just sit down and play and have a few laughs along the way. It's very relaxed.
Because these youngsters are playing so good. I hear them and say to myself, oh, God, I might as well have quit. And then another mind says, how you going to eat? So that's one of the reasons I haven't quit.
I think that he's going to keep on doing what he's been doing. At the moment, we work 3 weeks on and 3 weeks off. And B.B. used the expression, that's going to be carved in stone.
When you mention the name B.B. King, everybody can identify with his hometown, and many of them began to know that that hometown is Indianola, Mississippi.
The Met Gables homecoming is
originally started by B.B. King.
Every year I go down there for what we call homecoming.
B.B. came up in the state of Mississippi with sweltering hate and racism and bigotry. And anyone who had the nerve and the fortitude to go out and fight to change that, B.B. supported it. And Medic was the one who chose to do that in Mississippi. He led us first to lead us into that.
In 2008, Indianola showed its gratitude and opened the B.B. King Museum. Every year, tens of thousands of people visit from all over the world to this little town in Mississippi to share one of the greatest journeys ever told.
All right, put your hands over her head, please. Okay, one more time.
You know, the only person who doesn't think BB's great is probably BB.
People call me king of the blues. I've heard it many, many times. Do you think I think that? No, I do not. I think it's a lot of people can do exactly what I do, and a lot of them can do it better. They're just not me.
Did you ever hear a church bell tone?
Ever hear a church bell tone? Did you ever hear
church bell tone? Then you know that old B is dead and gone.
He never forgets old friends. If he's aware of a situation with one or an old band member who he considers them all family, current and past.
He cares about people. He loves people. And I think he's the most easygoing person I've ever seen.
He wanted to share his talent and his soul with the world. And that's what he did.
He's a one of a kind.
I mean, he's just like, you know, unbelievable.
There's only one BB.
Friedrich Nietzsche said, for true greatness to take place, there requires a long obedience in the same direction.
I can't tell anybody what I want to hear, but I have, I hear it myself, but I can't play it. I don't know how to really get it myself.
I think sometimes the sound that I hear has never been the sound that I want to hear, if it makes sense.
It is a little sound that I hear, but I can't tell anybody about it.
When I hear what I would like to hear, if ever, I think I'd have to stop because it probably won't sound as good as I'm thinking it will.
I think that as a lesson in living, you can look at BB and also learn what it's like to be a man and get through all those difficult times he had and come through with the heart that he still has. It's no mean accomplishment.
I don't think I've done the best that I could have done. I thought I had. I thought that I did everything the best I could, but when I look back, I see that as some slacks. You can do better.
I've never told him, but I sometimes call him father of us all because that's the way I see him. It's very difficult to find words to say. Excuse me?
He sang the blues and did a great job of it and rose to a great height where even invited by kings and potentates from where he was.
I've never met a king before, so I'm a bit nervous, but also grateful. So grateful. Thank you.
I said, Holy Father, I know you're always doing things for others, so I wanted to do something for you, sir. I said, I'd like to offer my guitar to you. He took it himself. He stepped in and took it from the guy, and he smiled again. Then he said, happy holidays to you and your family, BB. Oh, my God. He said, BB.
Through the night, lead me, oh Lord, to the light.
some nights when you want to go out and just take a walk, clear your head, or jump into a car just to take a drive, you can't do it. Secret Service won't let you, and that's frustrating. But then there are other nights where B.B. King and Mick Jagger come over to your house to play for a concert. Come on, baby, don't you want to go? Same old place, sweet home Chicago.
And now it's my honor as Governor of the state of Mississippi to proclaim February 15, 2005 as B.B. King Day for the entire state of Mississippi. And I urge all citizens to join me and the legislature in celebrating and honoring this great Mississippi.
Only God knows how I feel. I am so happy. Thank you.
And I pledge mine.
Well, the only thing about the blues from B.B. is going like everything else. The world goes on. It's not going to stop because B.B. King leaves, but it'll never be the same. But I'm here to tell you, B.B. is leaving a legend that's going to be hard to be beat.
We just got a B.B. King in our life. There ain't nothing else like it.
When I start to sound as bad as I think I will when I get a certain age, I hope that, if, that little bell will ring in my head, it's just time to stop. But other than that, I wait till the great one upstairs take me away. Because I don't feel bad. Feel pretty good at 85, so here I am. It's the best I can answer. Today at the homecoming, I saw a little boy in a choir that reminded me so much of Little Riley King, me, moi. And I almost cried thinking that here he is today. He didn't have to go through what I went through. What is it that I could have told him or could tell you that would make the life better for that little guy that looked like a little Riley King? Then I smile and think, the sky's the limit.
What do you want to do with your music and with your singing? Play the best that I can, reach as many people as can, as many countries. In other words, I'd like the whole world to be able to hear B.B. King sing and play the blues.
I swear by stars above, I'll keep my word, my love. Lord, I wonder, yes, I wonder, do my baby think of me? Oh, I wonder, Lord, I wonder, do my baby think of me? Now I wonder, Lord, I wonder, will my babe come back to me? Yeah, she been gone so long, just can't stand it no more. Oh, she been gone so long, just can't stand it no more. Now I ain't got nobody and no place to go. If she